Good morning, everyone. It's Thursday, February 6th, 2020, and I have a great interview upcoming with a national hero. His name is Alfred Adask, and he resides in Texas, and we're so blessed to have him in our state. Anyway, upcoming is a few screenshots of the 3 pages that he sent to me to look at while we were discussing this important topic. And you can pause to read them or screenshot them at your leisure. And thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this little chat we had last night. Thanks. Bye.
Hello everyone, this is Erin Davis, and tonight we have the grand pleasure of talking to Alfred Adask. It is Wednesday, February the 5th, 2020, and so many of our friends are asking how you're doing, Al, and we're so glad to talk to you and hear what you have to say tonight.
All right, pleasure to be here, Erin. We're going to talk about an aspect of spiritual warfare. We're going to talk about how the government of the United States has reduced people to the status of animals and why that's important, why the theory of evolution is spiritual warfare. If you're an animal, you're not going to heaven. There's no proviso for that I'm aware of. They may have cartoons of all good dogs go to heaven or whatever. That might be good for Walt Disney and the rest, but it's not. So far as I know, I'm not able to find any evidence of that in the Bible. So we're going to talk about Bible law. We're going to talk about the organic law of the United States of America. We're going to talk about government law, which are statutes and code sections. And we'll see how we started as men and women made in God's image. And thanks to our government, we have been evolved into animals. And animals have no rights, no significant rights. I mean, you have to take care of your farm animals and the rest of that sort of thing, but only from the perspective of not allowing them to suffer any economic loss. You can't go out there and just kill the cow just because it might be fun, because it's going to be money out of your pocket. All right? If you are no better than a cow, there are all sorts of consequences that are contrary to your health and your standing and your rights as a man or a woman. So let's just start up here and see if we can make some sense out of this. What's the most important principle in the Bible?
We're made in God's image. Genesis.
Nope. Genesis 1:1.
Right.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The Creator owns the creation. That principle continues to this day in copyright law and patent law. The man who invents a new machine or a new process, he owns it. By virtue of the act of creation, he owns it, and he can do whatever he wants with it. If he creates a new automobile or a new airplane or a new whatever, he owns that, and it's up to him. He can do whatever he wants with it. He can sell it, he can lease it, he can set fire to it and burn it, and because he doesn't like it. By virtue of the act of creation, he owns whatever has been created. And Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and that includes you and me. Right? He owns us. We are his creation, and he is our God by virtue of the act of creation. A lot of people think Genesis 1:1 is like a beginning of a novel. It was a dark and rainy night. Right? That's not what it is. It's a statement of legal title, legal ownership to the heavens and the earth, including you and me. By virtue of creation, he owns it. Genesis 1, second principle. What's the second most important principle? Erin, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm listening. The second most, well, I just know that the first, it's a trinity and a trinity, like time, space, and...
Nope. Now, not in my opinion. I'm not telling you what God's truth is exactly. I'm giving you my opinion. Second most important principle is on the sixth day, God created man in his image and gave man dominion over the animals.
Okay, yeah.
And as you'll see in the rest of this, before we get done with the rest of this sort of thing, dominion over the animals means I can't be an animal. If I'm made in God's image and we are given, and as a man made in, created man made in God's image, I am given dominion over the animals. I can't be an animal and be a Christian or a Jew. All right? Can't be it. All right? You've got to hang on to that idea that you are a created man or woman made in God's image, and that distinguishes you from the animals, and it is critical to your faith. Mm-hmm. If you're not believing that, you're in big trouble. And you can see evidence of this in Genesis 9:6. Genesis 9:6 explains why it's illegal, why it's a violation of God's law to kill a man. Right? Mm-hmm. Murder. Why is that wrong? It's wrong because the man is made in God's image. Mm-hmm. That's why. This would be the same reason why homosexuality is wrong. Mm-hmm. Sodomy is a violation of, if you're going to sodomize a man or woman, you are engaged in, you are sodomizing an image of God. Mm-hmm. All right? This is, I believe, doesn't say this in the Bible, but this is my conclusion, and maybe it's right and maybe it's wrong, but I believe this is the reason why God finds homosexuality to be an abomination. Mm-hmm. All right? And it's consistent with Genesis 9:6 says you can't shoot a man or a woman because they're made in God's image. That's the reason murder is wrong. And it's been the reason for thousands of years. But if you weren't made in God's image, if you weren't a created man or a created woman, it would no longer, what is the reason why we can't kill them? And I don't know that there is one, other than they may be faster on the draw than you are. They may have a bigger gun, longer range. Right? If we can kill them before they kill us, they better watch their step. Mm-hmm. But Bible says you can't murder a man or a woman or a child because they're made in God's image. Mm-hmm. All right, Genesis 9:6. All right, next thing I'm going to go to is the organic law. We just had Bible law, God's law. We're going to do the organic law of the United States of America. This is the people's law. The organic law of the United States of America is the law that was passed by the people. Right? Mm-hmm. First, it has 4 components, and I'm going to give you a URL here before we're done where you can go find this yourself. You can see this, you can read it. It's the Revised Statutes of 1878, and they have a section in there that's the organic law of the United States of America, and it includes the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, the Northwest Ordinance, and the ratification in the Constitution of the United States. 4 documents: Declaration of Independence, Articles of Confederation, Northwest Ordinance, and Constitution of the United States. I sent you a paper.
Yeah, and I think when we upload the video, we'll put this, if it's all right with you, we'll put this on the screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, good.
All right, then people will be able to follow along with this if they care to do so. Mm-hmm. The Declaration of Independence is an extraordinary document. We celebrate... My headset fell off. Lost my headset for a second here. The Declaration of Independence is an extraordinary spiritual document. It says, in the second sentence, it says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Mm-hmm. Okay? Note that these rights are from God. They're God-given rights, and they are unalienable, which means no man can take them away from you. They are as unalienable, they are as inherent as the color of your eyes. Mm-hmm. If something happened and you lost your eyes, or your vision, and especially your eyes, right? Lost the eyeballs, your eyes would still be blue or brown or whatever color they were. It's in your genes. These unalienable rights, in my opinion, are in our genes. They are an attribute. Again, this is second sentence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, not persons or individuals, but men, and we're talking about mankind, men and women, are created equal. Remember Genesis 1:26 through 28. On the sixth day, God created man and gave man dominion over the animals, made in his image, created him in his image. Again, they're saying all men are created equal. Yeah, they are. And they're endowed by their creator. Yeah, yeah. Their creator God among with certain unalienable rights. These unalienable rights are the ones that come from God. They can't be taken away by a court. They can't be taken away by a man on the street, a mugger, a thug. If you violate their unalienable rights, you should be in deep trouble. Then among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And one of the things that I neglected says liberty is given us by God. What does that make it?
Unalienable.
Well, yes, but beyond that, it makes it a blessing.
A blessing, yes.
Yeah. And the preamble to the Constitution of the United States, thumb over here and find it. See if I can find it. It says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, and provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." All right?
Yep.
Liberty is a blessing. And before we're done with this, the purpose of trying to explain this series of what strike me as logical steps, the purpose of this stairway is to be able to resist the government by establishing that you are not an animal, that you are a man or woman, a created man or woman made in God's image. And if you are, you're not subject to most of the government laws. And I'll show you why that is real in just a few minutes before we get to it. But Declaration of Independence is talking about those created men and women. They're talking about the same creation, created people, created men and women that we find in Genesis 1:26 through 28. And they're saying they get certain rights from God. All right? Declaration of Independence, in addition to declaring these rights from God, it also created 13 nation states. It created the state of Virginia and the state of New York, and they took the 13 colonies and turned them into nation states. They were each as separate as Germany is from Japan. Right?
Yep.
Two separate nations. In this case, Germany and Japan are two separate nations. In this case, the 13 colonies became 13 states. They were not a single country. They were 13 countries. 5 years later, 1781, they enacted the Articles of Confederation. And this document created a single, unified confederation and perpetual union. And it was equivalent to creating a single nation where there had been 13. But they expressly tell you in the Articles of Confederation that they created the United States of America. And it says, the, capital T-H-E, United States of America. That is the proper name for the Confederation and perpetual union. The union is perpetual. Even if nobody's there to fill the offices, one thing or another like that, the union is perpetual. Created by the Articles of Confederation. This is the same union, I believe, I don't know it to be absolutely true, but when President Trump gave his State of the Union speech, this is what he was talking about. This is the union, in my opinion, that he was talking about. It was the perpetual union created by the Articles of Confederation. Third item is the Northwest Ordinance. All right, this is 1787, year of our Lord 1787. Northwest Ordinance. It provided for the creation of territories. One of the great defects or deficiencies in the Articles of Confederation is the Articles of Confederation, which created the United States of America, only has member states and no territories, no districts like Washington, D.C., provided for in the Articles of Confederation. And the problem we had at the time when United States, when the people of what became the United States fought Great Britain, there was no proviso in the Articles of Confederation for territories. There were only states of the Union, all right, which included it's not just that Union at the time included Georgia and the southern states, the Carolinas and whatever, but there was no proviso for territories. Virginia owned or claimed all the land from the Atlantic coast of Virginia on westward up all the way to Wisconsin. They claimed the land around the Great Lakes. And there was nothing they could do with it. It was like me claiming to own the land on the moon. It might be I've got a claim on it, but I'm never going to get there. All right, I get all the diamonds out of the moon. Well, yeah, but I'm not capable of firing a rocket that'll carry me to the moon so I can harvest the diamonds, mine the diamonds. There's nothing they could do with the territory. And the other states did not want to join a union if they did not want to join a single national government if Virginia owned probably 30-40% of all the land that was included in the first 13 states. All right? So Virginia had to give up much of its land. They had to give up the territory that would become one day Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin. And they did. They didn't mind. It wasn't a problem. They gave it up and they just kept what is modern day Virginia. This was ultimately provided for by the Northwest Territory, which provided for the creation, Northwest Ordinance, which provided for the creation of territories. We came along with the Constitution of the United States, and the Constitution came in and it was ratified by the people in 1788. All right, a year after the ordinance, the Northwest Ordinance. Virginia had abandoned its claim on all that massive territory, and the people of Massachusetts said, "Okay, we'll play." Rhode Island said, "Okay, we'll play. Sign us up. We'll play this game. We will join in under the Constitution of the United States." But the United States is not the United States of America. The Constitution of the United States is the document that created the United States, and it includes provisos for territory. It concludes provisos for districts, particularly Washington, what became Washington, D.C. There's no proviso for territories. There's no proviso for districts in the Articles of Confederation or the United States of America, which leads us to a very strange and bizarre conclusion. Washington, D.C. is in the United States, but it's not in the United States of America. And I know how goofy that sounds. It sounds goofy to me also, but nevertheless, that appears to be the political reality of it, the jurisdictional reality of it, and it's something people can consider, whatever. There's organic law of the United States of America can be found. There's a link down here that you can see in the next section. In the 1878 revised statutes of the United States, they admitted that the organic law of the United States of America is the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, the Northwest Territory Ordinance, and the Constitution of the United States. This is the Congress talking in the revised statutes. And there's links on this document where it says the organic law of the United States of America. And if you go to page 16, that's where it starts on the section on the organic law of the United States of America as declared by Congress. Right? And this is an important concept because it means that the Declaration of Independence is as much the law as the Articles of Confederation, the Northwest Ordinance, and the Constitution of the United States. The Declaration of Independence is the one that says we get these rights from God. And the reason this is important is if your rights are given to you by God, you can argue that under the First Amendment, the government can't take those rights away from you without violating your freedom of religion. This is the fundamental argument of this list of points and authorities that I'm trying to present right now. If you can make a proper claim on the blessing of liberty as an unalienable right provided by God, you can claim it under your freedom of religion. And it creates problems for the government that are substantial. And that's, they can't easily interfere with our freedom of religion. I won't say they don't do it, I won't say they can't do it, but they can't do it easily, and they don't want to do it. Not because they like religion, but because they are concerned and afraid that if the public sees that our God-given unalienable rights are part of our faith, our religious faith, and that the government is prevented by the First Amendment from establishing a religion, people are going to get angry. And they're going to say, wait a second. You've been taking our unalienable rights away from us by declaring us to be animals, and I'll show you that in a moment. Mm-hmm. And that's the point that's what I'm trying to expose here. The government has declared us to be animals, and I can show you several places in the United States Code where that's true. They've declared us to be animals because there's no proviso in the Declaration of Independence for God-given, unalienable rights given to animals. They're only given to created men and created women. They are not made available to animals. If you're willing to accept the idea that you're an animal, then you have no significant rights the government needs to take care of. All right? Now, the government may pretend to just take care of your rights to some degree, but they're not obligated to do so if you're an animal. We're just going to take care of it. It's like having the pet dog. You know, don't want to shoot the dog. That's our favorite dog. We love the dog. Spot, come over here. Spot barks if anybody tries to get into the house and the rest of this sort of thing. Good watchdog. We like Spot. All right. So we give him special privileges around here. He can go in and out the door whenever he wants and play in the backyard and come in the house. Or he has certain rights, but he doesn't have God-given unalienable rights. Mm-hmm. All right, next thing I'm going to go to is statutory law. This is the government's law. The organic law, we had God's law and the Bible law to begin with, and a couple of notes and a couple of three spaces or three items in the list under God's law. Mm-hmm. Next, we had the organic law, which is the people's law, which include 4 documents: Declaration of Independence, Articles of Confederation, Northwest Ordinance, and Constitution of the United States. 4 documents are included, and you can prove that. Again, the organic law of the United States of America, you can find it in the 1878 revised statutes of the United States. All right. Now we're going to go on to statutory law, which is the government's law. And the first thing we want to look at is the Pure Food and Drug Act. Mm-hmm. And again, the link to it is here. And we're looking especially for Section 6 because it includes the phrase man or other animals. Mm-hmm. All right. And Section 6 says that the term drug, as used in this act, shall include all medicines and preparations recognized in the United States Pharmacopoeia or National Formulary for internal or external use, and any substance or mixture of substances intended to be used for the cure, mitigation, or prevention of disease of either man or other animals. All right?
Yep.
This is a big phrase. This is a big phrase. When they say, if I said a horse or other animals, it makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. We know that a horse is a specific example of a class called animals. If I said a cow or other animals, it makes perfect sense. A cow is a member of a large group of creatures called animals. Mm-hmm. If I said a fish or other animals, makes perfect sense. But if I said a rock or other animals, you can talk to 5-6-year-old kids and they'll say, Mommy, Daddy, a rock is not an animal. They understand the language. Adults may not, but the kids do. Right? Yep. And what they're saying, when they say man or other animals, they are saying that you are an animal. Mm-hmm. Right? Then they go on to define food. And they say the term food is used herein shall include all articles for food, drink, confectionery, or condiment by man or other animals. It's the second time in the 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act where they have defined man to be an animal. If you're an animal, you can kiss your unalienable rights goodbye. God did not create animals and endow them with certain unalienable rights. They were only for the men and women who are made in God's image. And the government is declaring you to be an animal. And so far as I know, this is the first time they did it. It's in the 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act. And the URL is, I've got it here where anyone wants to look at it, man or other animals. Mm-hmm. Oh, and I found this out back in 2006. When I was sued by the Attorney General of Texas for $25,000 per day, that's $9 million per year, for the manufacture and distribution of a controlled substance. It was a civil suit, it wasn't criminal, because the controlled substance was colloidal silver. And all I was a fiduciary for a trust that leased some chairs and computers to the corporation that was manufacturing colloidal silver. But they made me a defendant. And once you get the threat, they're sending you paperwork every 2 to 6 weeks in the mail, a nice fat file for the next hearing, for the next whatever. It focuses your attention considerably when you're threatened with fines of $9 million a year. Mm-hmm. If this had gone badly, I'd probably get stuck. Well, in theory, they could have ruled, they could have had a decision against me for in the neighborhood of $20 million. All right. Well, it makes you focus your eyes a little bit.
Yeah.
And they said in the paperwork, the suit had been going on since 2001, and they said in the paperwork that the key to this suit was deciding whether or not colloidal silver, which is an inexpensive antibiotic, is a drug under the Pure Food and Drug Act they said it under Texas law and under federal law, 21 Title 21, United States Code, Section 321. Is it a drug? That was the key to the case. Well, it's a case. If that's the key to the case, then it would, it's obvious. What I need to do is start studying the definitions of drugs and see what I can learn about that fundamental fact. Can I defeat the presumption that colloidal silver is a drug? And if I can, we win. And if I can't, I'll be stopping by your house to borrow some money because I'm going to be broke. And I read the definition that I'm just talking to you about. Well, I read it I didn't find 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act at that time, but I did find 21 USC 321. That's Title 21, United States Code, Section 321. And subsection F says the term food means articles used for food or drink by man or other animals. Mm-hmm. Man, here we go again. We saw it first in the 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act. In fact, in my lawsuit that I was involved in, I didn't find that till later. I didn't find the 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act until maybe even a couple of years after the suit was finished. But the point is, here we go with man or other animals again. Mm-hmm. And in subsection G1, the term drug means articles recognized in the official United States Pharmacopoeia, official homeopathic pharmacopoeia of the United States, or official national formulary of any supplement of any of them, and B, articles intended for use in the diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease in man or other animals. Mm-hmm. And C, articles other than food intended to affect the structure and any function of the body of man or other animals. Right? And the first time I saw this, I thought, well, you darn fools, you don't even know how to write. They had man or other animals in there, and I thought, that makes man as an animal. You can't. And then I found it was a second time. They said it in subsection G. They said it a second time, and then a third time. And I thought, my God, they really do think of us as animals. We really are on a global plantation, at least from the perspective of government. You are not a created man or woman in the eyes of the government. You are an animal. All right, and you can find evidence of this again in 21 USC 321, Section F, definition of food, Section G, definition of drugs, and where did we go after that? Device, Section H. The term device, except when used in paragraph N of this section and sections 321I, blah, 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 means an instrument, apparatus, implement, machine, contrivance, implant, in vitro reagent, or other similar or related article, including any component or accessory which is recognized in the official formulary of the United States Pharmacopoeia, any supplement, intended for the use in the diagnosis of disease or under other conditions in the cure, mitigation, treatment, prevention of disease in man or other animals. All right, this is the fifth time we found it. Get into subsections 3, intended to affect the structure of any function of the body of man or other animals. That's 4. I think, what did we got? Maybe even 6, isn't it? I think it's, 5. I think there's 3 right there.
Didn't you say it was the same in all the codes around the world?
I've had people contact me. One guy contacted me from England. Another guy contacted me from either New Zealand or Australia. I don't remember which. And they said that after hearing me talk about this goes back to probably about 2008. They said they checked the English code and definition for drugs. Mm-hmm. And it's also defined in terms of man or other animals. Mm-hmm. They said that they'd checked the New Zealand or Australia definition for drugs, and that it's defined in terms of man or other animals. It means it implies. Deliberate. I haven't verified this for myself, but it implies that this is a cornerstone for the New World Order.
Yeah.
We will not be men and women made in God's image. We will be animals. Mm-hmm. Right? That is their fundamental principle on this. And if we are, we don't enjoy the blessing of liberty. We don't enjoy any blessing. We are not likely to reach salvation. Where we were here just when we were talking about the term device, all right, is defined in terms of man or other animals. That means if you've gone to the doctor and the doctor's used a stethoscope on you, insofar as that's a medical device, that device makes you an animal. If he's given you an MRI, if he's used any medical equipment on you, you are presumed to be livestock. And this may explain why the doctor can put you on the operating table and cut a hole in your body and remove organs or repair organs or whatever. And if you die, the doctor is not criminally liable. He killed an animal. He did not kill a man or woman made in God's image as per Genesis 9:6. Mm-hmm. How do the doctors get away with killing people? How do the corporations get away with killing people, with selling products that are lethal to people? And the answer is they're not people in the eyes of the government. They are animals. And where does this all come from? It comes from Carl Linnaeus, at least. Well, let me give you one more point here before we get to that, before we get to Carl Linnaeus. He says, Title 1, United States Code, subsection or section 8, and you can find this, you can just type 1 space USC space 8. You can search it, bounce around a little bit, you will come to the text of Article 1, section United States Code, section 8. And it says, in determining the meaning of any act of Congress or of any ruling, regulation, or interpretation of the various administrative bureaus and agencies of the United States, the words person, human being, child, and individual shall include every infant member of the species Homo sapien who was born alive at any stage of development. What they're telling us is that the word person means Homo sapien. The word human being, or the term human being, means Homo sapien. And anytime you see an act of Congress, anytime you see a law, rule, regulation, anytime you read it says all persons over the age of 45, it's telling you that all animals over the age of 45 are subject to this law. Persons, human beings, child, and individual, all right, are Homo sapiens. That means they are animals. As used in this section, the term born alive with respect to a member of the species Homo sapien. Yada yada. They have some more after that. Subsection C. Nothing in this section shall be construed to affirm, deny, expand, or contract any legal status or right applicable to any member of the species Homo sapien at any point prior to being born alive as defined in this section. Again, they're telling us that we are deemed to be Homo sapiens. Where does the term Homo sapien come from?
Good question.
It comes from Carl Linnaeus, a Swedish biologist who developed a system of taxonomy for classifying plants and animals. He has an animal kingdom and a plant kingdom, and it was devised about 1750 and released to the public and celebrated by scientists around the world as one of the great achievements of mankind. Well, it wasn't, because there's no proviso for created man in Mr. Linnaeus' taxonomy. He has animal kingdom and plant kingdom. And I've got a link here people can go to and learn more. But he laid his notions about animal kingdom and plant kingdom, laid the foundation for the theory of evolution that was postulated by Darwin, I think about 1814, 15, I'm not sure, but in the 1800s, if I recall correctly. Mm-hmm. Linnaeus is a big thing, and he's saying, you are just an animal. All right? Declaration of Independence says, oh, no, you're not. You're a created man or created woman made in God's image. All right? You are entitled to God-given unalienable rights, which government can't take away from you. They can't just sit back and say, well, we can do whatever we want. If you're an animal, they can. Mm-hmm. We can treat you just like Spot the dog. Yeah, we like Spot the dog pretty well. He guards the house, the rest of that sort of thing. But if push comes to shove, I'll shoot the dog and eat him. All right? That dog doesn't have a right to life the same way as a man or woman does, right, or a child. All right? The dog is, I like Spot, blah, blah, blah. He's a good dog. But if the food supply goes down, I'm going to eat that dog. Mm-hmm. That's what has to be done, because he's not a man or a woman. He's not created in God's image. And therefore, he's like a cow, pig, goat, fish, birds, chickens. Mm-hmm. Can't have chicken for dinner tonight. We can have Spot. Mm-hmm. Come here, Spot. It'll take you for a walk out behind the woods, out in the woods there. I want to thank you for the contribution you're about to make. So the point behind this, and I know it's hard to follow, and it's hard for me to even lay this thing out in a coherent manner. It's not that complex, but it is so surprising and so unbelievable that it's hard to believe. What we're talking about is a persistent effort by government to, this country started with the presumption that we are created men. We're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. That's where this country started, all right, with the Declaration of Independence. This is a fundamental principle. Mm-hmm. But government doesn't want that, because if you and I are created men and women, made in God's image, government is our servant, mm-hmm, rather than our master. Right. On the other hand, if you and I are just animals, right, government can kick us around any way they want. Mm-hmm. Here come the scoops. I don't know if you saw that movie. I don't even remember the name of it, Charlton Heston. They had the scoops would be coming down the streets, collecting people to be processed into Soylent Green, which was the food that they were serving, that they were feeding people. This was a dystopian view of the future and how the world would end with us eating each other. We would turn into a world of cannibals. It was out of the 60s, or before most people's recollection and the rest of it. Something like that is going on. And here's another one for you. In 1935, Nazi Germany passed the 1935 Nuremberg Act, which declared the Jews to be subhuman, Untermenschen, animals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Based on that 1935 act that said, you're nothing but livestock, you're subhuman. They could legally collect Jews, round them up, send them off to concentration camps in railroad cars, and at the concentration camps we would see evidence of murder, mass murder, genocide. This is all based on a law. In 1935 it said the Jews are nothing but animals. 1935 Nuremberg Act.
Mm-hmm.
This is not just an interesting curiosity. When people get angry, when the Hutus get angry at the Tutsis over in Africa, first thing they do is call them animals.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They understand this principle that if they're animals, we can kill them.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to protect them. We don't have to respect them. We can kill them because they're just livestock. Kill them just like, pardon me?
What did they call them in Vietnam? Gooks or something?
Yeah, gooks, it's the same thing. It happens every time you get into a war. You call the enemy some sort of, you degrade them. You don't recognize a man or woman made in God's image.
Right.
You're killing them because they're just livestock. They're just monkeys, they're gooks, they're whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Something.
Mm-hmm.
The Jews were Untermenschen. So it was no problem. It was legal. If you can understand what I'm saying about that, it should be scary to discover that your government is treating you and me and everyone else like animals.
Mm-hmm.
They regard us as animals, just like the Nazis did the Jews. Now the government's going to say, oh, we're good guys, we would never put you people in concentration camps. Well, that's very nice, but you're taking away our God-given, unalienable rights. And it seems to be happening. If the reports I had about the definition of drugs in England, and the report I had from New Zealand or Australia that the definition of drugs was also based on man or other animals, if those are accurate, this is evidence that this is cornerstone for the New World Order.
Yeah.
They really do plan to run this as a global plantation. And it's in the law, or at least implied in the law we have. And the last thing I'll say on this is that when I was sued for $25 a day, I was the last defendant of 7. First 3 defendants were Mr. and Mrs. William Fennell and their corporation. They manufactured colloidal silver. A man named Ben Taylor and his corporation and his trust were added as 3 more defendants later on. The case started in 2001. I wasn't added until I volunteered to be fiduciary for Taylor's trust. And then they made me a defendant, right? Much to my surprise. No good deed goes unpunished, I thought. But where was I?
Amen, that's right.
Since then, we never really got to court. We had a number of pretrial hearings and one thing and another like that. And in the end, the government simply dropped the lawsuit. This is the Attorney General of Texas. Dropped the lawsuit against all 7. I submitted a freedom of religion defense, and that I said, look, I'm not an animal. All right? And the government, they didn't say, boy, you sure are smart, or boy, you sure are stupid, or that's wishful thinking. They didn't say anything. They just quit.
Wow.
After investing $6 years and $500,000 in pretrial hearings and pretrial investigation.
Didn't someone anoint the courthouse with oil?
Oh yeah, that was Ben. Ben would get some virgin olive oil and have his prayer group. He attended a group of people, a Bible study group, and he'd go to the Bible study group meetings about once a week, and they prayed over that little bottle of olive oil. All right, and when we went to court, Ben would anoint all 4 corners of the courthouse in Austin, Texas.
Good.
All right, he'd anoint all 4 corners of the courthouse with this oil that had been prayed over. And then on one occasion, he got inside the courtroom when no one was around, and he anointed the chair where the judge sat behind the bench.
I love it.
Yeah, I do too. It was the only thing that bothered me. I mean, when we'd get up there, did you anoint the courthouse? Did you? I was concerned. Oh my God! If he didn't know, what if he didn't anoint the courthouse or didn't anoint the judge's chair or whatever? But Ben always anointed them, and things worked out well for us. In the end, they just dropped the case. And I doubt that you can find many examples in this country, maybe none other than that one, where the government has invested 6 years and $500,000 in a case against pro se litigants. We didn't even, Mr. and Mrs. Furnell in the beginning, they hired their own attorneys. One of the better law firms in Texas, I don't remember the name, but at the time I was told it was one of the best law firms in Texas. They paid him what, $160,000, and basically got nothing out of it.
Wow.
And the case continued, and they left Texas. They left Texas for parts unknown. Right? And the case was left to Ben Taylor and his trust and his corporation and me. And we put this together and said, we're not animals. Essentially, we had other lines of defense besides that, but we said we're not animals. They dropped the case. A couple of years later, after the case was dropped, the law was changed. And the last time I looked, the man or other animals section in the Texas definition of drugs and food and maybe devices, I don't remember devices for sure, but the Texas law that defined food and drugs had previously been virtually identical to the federal law, right, in terms of words and whatever. They changed the law from man or other animals to man or animals. And that's not necessarily offensive. It's not necessarily good. There's still a possibility that the man they're talking about is an evolved man as opposed to a created man. All right? Two different kinds of beings entirely. If you're an evolved man, you'd be part monkey. All right? If you're a created man, another story. You're made in God's image. And you can make a claim on that being made in the image of God if you can understand the First Amendment. Say, look, we have freedom of religion. You can't define me as a monkey, an animal, because I am not. You are impinging on my hope for salvation. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I get it. I
I
totally
understand.
get it.
It's not all that complex once you start to see the component parts. It's not all that complex. And what you're looking at, what's most astonishing, is you're looking at evidence of spiritual warfare. This is no game. They are attacking your faith. They're attacking the Christian faith, attacking the Jewish faith. I don't know how many others, but if your faith requires you to be created in God's image, a created man, created woman, made in God's image, if that's in your faith, as I tried to explain at the beginning, one of the most important principles in the Bible, you can be saved if you are created in God's image. But if you're just another animal, it's no big deal to kill you, to eat you, to dispose of you any way they want to do it. There's no Genesis 9:6 to protect you from liability as livestock. And shoot you just like they shoot, cows and goats and sheep and whatever else. What's for dinner?
Yeah. I think the difference between the first time I heard this presentation and tonight is the salvation aspect of it.
Well, it might be that I didn't say anything that time over at Pastor Broden's church, but you get into this thing and it kind of wears me out at times.
That's a big deal, like the first time I heard it, I totally caught on to what you said, and maybe you said it regarding salvation and maybe you didn't, but tonight I certainly caught on to that.
This is big. I mean, this is massive. Again, this is like that 1935 Nuremberg Act where they declared the Jews to be Untermenschen, subhuman, animals. We can kill them. We can round them up, ship them off in a boxcar, send them off to a camp where they can be exterminated. Just a slaughterhouse for animals. It was legal. The point I'm trying to make here is that from the Nazis' perspective, it was quite illegal to take the Jews off to concentration camps because they were just livestock. I guarantee you our government is reserving that presumption for us. It'd be legal to do whatever they want to us. Why not? We're just animals. You don't object to being an animal, do you? You believe in the theory of evolution, isn't that right? If you
No.
believe in the theory of evolution, you're livestock.
No.
You can see, you get into this, and it really is, it's kind of spooky, it's kind of scary. The government is waging spiritual warfare against the people. You can see, again, the preamble to the Constitution of the United States to talk about the blessings of liberty. Declaration of Independence talks about the unalienable rights from our Creator. This is spiritual warfare, and the government is fighting it, and most people don't understand it's even happening. Spiritual warfare? What's that guy talking about? He must be crazy. No, I must be, I don't know, compelled, blessed, whatever, to read this and understand what it means. You can't use the phrase man or other animals by accident.
No, it's not.
It means that they deem you to be an animal.
Yeah. And that kind of leads me into the video I sent you earlier today. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it.
I looked at about 20 minutes of it, but I was working on this list
Yeah.
to send you this document.
It's kind of leading to euthanasia. If you can't give energy back to the system, then they can just put you down like a dog.
I understand. And they can put you down like a dog because you're not made in God's image. They don't recognize that.
Right.
This is critical. All right? It's not just an oddity. And that's the way it come across when people first hear about it. Oh, isn't it odd? Government thinks we're just animals. What do you think about that, Susie? Well, I like animals.
And
maybe they'll give us some peanuts or scratch us behind the ears or something like that.
They kind of dropped the word being after human being, too. I don't know if that's significant or not.
Well, it's human being is still Title I, Section 8, if I recall correctly, is one of the four terms that they define as Homo sapien. Homo sapien is in the animal kingdom. It's a term that comes from Carl Linnaeus from 1750, thereabouts. Laid the foundation for the Darwin's theory of evolution. And evolution is presuming not merely that we evolved from monkeys in a sense, or chimpanzees, or whatever, apes, whatever you want to put in there. It's not just that we evolved. That's not the point. The point is, under Darwin's theory of evolution, under Linnaeus' theory of taxonomy, we are animals, and as such, we are not created in God's image. And if you're not created in God's image, guess what? You are incredibly vulnerable. There's no reason why you can't be shot, except maybe you're faster on the draw than the guy who wants to shoot you. Maybe you've got a bigger gun. Maybe you've got a better intelligence service. Maybe you have nuclear arms while he's only got firearms. So we better watch out. This guy's got a nuclear weapon. Leave him alone. But it's nothing to do with whether or not he's made in God's image.
Right.
He is presumed to be. If he sets that nuclear weapon down, shoot him. You understand? He's disarmed. There's no reason not to shoot him because he's just an animal. He's just livestock. So.
Yeah, and it makes me think about the cows and how they feed us because they're just cattle, and they're valued to us as food and energy. And I think we are just food and energy because our financial QE1, QE2, all the fiat currency is running out, and that's going to fall down. They're going to have something to back this blockchain, and it's going to be human energy. And once
I don't know what it's going to be. It'll take a little more philosophy or spirituality than I have. I'm not gifted with prophecy, and I don't know. But what I do know is I know it for a fact that I've been in a situation where I tried this argument when it had never been heard of before, so far as I know. And I tried it on the Attorney General of Texas, and they just folded their hand. We'd been getting paperwork, as I said before, every 2 to 6 weeks, a nice fat file coming through the mail from the Attorney General of the state of Texas saying, we're going to get you.
That couldn't be.
And I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about. It is unnerving.
Yeah, it is.
And we made them stop. That's evidence that this is not just some little crackpot theory.
Is that
They changed the law.
right? And
Right?
is that with the same reason you spent time behind bars with no charges?
No,
Oh, that's a
no, it
different
was not
story.
that time. That was another deal that reflected back. I was divorced by a woman I wasn't married to.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I spent 344 days in a level 5 maximum security jail. I've never been charged with a crime. I've never been convicted of a crime. They didn't even give me a probable cause hearing. They just held me for 344 days. Because this goes back to 2002. This was before I got involved in man or other animals thing, about 4 years before that.
Oh.
But I knew enough. I studied the law for a number of years, and I knew enough to declare that I was acting at arm's length. Sign all my signatures at arm's length. It means I'm not there in a fiduciary capacity. And I know that's just gobbledygook and mysterious talk to the average person listening to this. But I'll tell you something, if you're interested in learning to deal with this government, and you're interested in learning something about the law, you need to study trusts. All right? This is where they get you. You think you're going to a court of law, you're almost never going to a court of law. You're going to a court of equity, or maybe administrative law, but not real law. But if you say I'm at arm's length, it's saying I'm not volunteering to be a fiduciary in this matter. And they held. They didn't know what to do with me. I got up there and I made it clear, and I didn't know what to do either. I knew a little. You understand? And so they said, well, he'll fold up. He'll fold up. We'll hold him for another week or two, and he'll fold up and he'll give us jurisdiction. I never did. I never folded up, and I sat there for 344 days, and they finally just said, all right, get him out of here.
Wow.
And I was leaving. I left that jail. It was Jefferson County, Missouri. I'd been extradited.
Wow.
You understand?
Over
No
state
warrant.
lines?
No warrant.
That was over state lines you got extradited?
Yeah, I was arrested in Texas and hauled off to Jefferson County, Missouri.
Wow.
Blah blah blah.
I listened to your presentation on the missing 13th Amendment and how that would eliminate the Esquire titles of nobility and the bar and all that. I thought that was fantastic too.
Well, what was more significant? That's what David Dodge, and Tom Dunn. They were the ones who discovered the missing 13th Amendment. They thought it would be a device to keep lawyers from running for public office.
I wish.
Well, maybe it could, but that was the least of it. The most important thing was that the law, this missing 13th Amendment, allegedly ratified about 1819, but under circumstances where it's not clear that it was ratified. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But the government presumed it was not. This amendment would have prevented honors, which are advantages or privileges that go to some people that don't go to other people. We can take money from you, okay, because you're obligated to pay, and we can give them money to me because I'm entitled to receive. That is an honor, right? An advantage or privilege. I get the money. You have to pay the money. I get to keep the money. Right?
Nice.
That becomes an advantage or privilege. I am privileged to take your money and spend it however I like on myself. And they can do it in favor of corporations and races and political groups and one thing and another like that. If they can dispense honors, but the missing 13th Amendment says, no titles of nobility, no honors. All right? It would have meant no special interest legislation. We can't raise taxes on the people in Oregon in order to pay the bills for the people of Illinois. We can raise the taxes on everybody, but we can't just raise taxes on one group of people. And we can't just hand the money out that we collect in taxes. It can't just benefit one group of people. It's special interest legislation. If government couldn't do any special interest legislation, they wouldn't need to go to Washington for more than a month or two every year. They could chase their secretaries around the desk for a month or so and then actually do some business. But you weren't going to find many laws that the majority of people will vote for. So, okay, that's good. That's good. It's good for all of us. Most people sit back, no, that's a good law for Illinois, but that's no good for Texas. Mm-hmm. We're voting against that. It would be no special interest legislation. They could only vote for laws and pass laws that were applied to all of us equally. And under those circumstances, there wouldn't be many laws that people would agree to.
I wish.
And government wouldn't have anything to do.
I wish.
And we would have a comparatively small government. Right? They wouldn't be out there to nickel dime everybody who wanted this, that, or the other. You might be able to get away with states, perhaps, distributing the wealth, taxing it in a way that was unequal, and distributing it in a way that was unequal. And I'm not even sure that's true, but you might get it out of the states, but not out of the federal government. It would be just paralyzed. This would have been, in theory, most important amendment of the Constitution. It was, in theory, ratified about 1819. And the question is it depends on whether or not Virginia ratified the amendment or not. And they can't find evidence. They know that they can't find proof. They can find evidence, but they can't find proof that Virginia ratified the amendment. And therefore, it was not added to the Constitution. But I'll tell you what did happen. David Dodge had initially, when he and Tom Dunn found this in the oldest library in Maine, went all the way back to the 1700s, may have preceded the Declaration of Independence, I don't recall clearly. And they were in one day they were arguing about something in the Constitution, and they asked the librarian to get them a copy of the oldest Constitution that she had in this comparatively ancient library. It's 2 centuries old. And she brought it out, and this Constitution had a 13th Amendment they'd never seen before.
Wow.
Well, David Dodge took it upon himself to drive around the country, and he went from archive to archive, and he found different books and documents that included this 13th Amendment as ratified. And in fact, what he had when he first brought the information to me, he had 26 states and territories that had passed, enacted, or printed copies of the Constitution of the United States that included this missing 13th Amendment. 26 states and territories. It was the most extraordinary, and nobody teaches us anything about this.
No.
I mean, this would have been one of the things on the quiz shows, where the host at the quiz show and says, "Aaron, tell us what was the biggest mistake we ever made relative to our constitutional government?" And you would say, "Well, of course that was the missing 13th Amendment, where we published an amendment that actually hadn't been ratified." Right? It would be common knowledge. People would joke about how dumb the founders were because they published an amendment in 26 states and territories as if it was ratified when it wasn't. And the error persisted from something like 1819 on up to, it was after the Civil War. The last time it was published that I'm aware of was, I think, the state of Wyoming, maybe Montana, but I think Wyoming. They published it after the Civil War. This amendment, this alleged error persisted for 50, 60 years.
Wow.
And nobody even hears about it. Dodge went back to the same archives a few years later, looking for the books and the documents that he had previously photocopied. But that's all he'd done. He didn't have them certified. They wouldn't stand up as proof in court. They were just photocopies. You could see they were real. I mean, they had ancient fonts and the rest of that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But he went back a second time. They were all gone.
What?
They were all gone. They'd been removed from the archives. He couldn't find. Wow. He'd found evidence of 26 different states and territories and photocopied it. But He went back a second time and couldn't find any of the evidence.
Wow.
All right? That's where we live.
Yeah.
I mean, we are in a world where if you get a hot item, it may be just made to disappear. And it can be done in this digital world.
Right.
It wasn't digital in the sense someone physically removed those books from the libraries and archives.
Right.
Where David Dodge couldn't get back to them a second time.
Right.
Or I don't know if they were burned or if they were just hauled off to some special library someplace that the public won't ever get into.
Right.
But I don't know. World we live in. Spiritual warfare, though. Yeah. At the heart of this, the question is, are you a created man or woman made in God's image? If you are, the government, in theory, has to treat you a certain way. They have to respect your God-given unalienable rights. If you're not, you're livestock. You got no more rights than Spot the dog.
That reminds me, I think the first time I heard somebody say unalienable was you, and then I thought, oh, why isn't it inalienable?
There's two different words.
Mm-hmm.
I mispronounce unalienable intentionally. Most people would say unalienable with a U. They say unalienable. Mm-hmm. And they also have inalienable, which is I-N instead of U-N at the beginning of the word. Mm-hmm. But they're two different words and they're two different meanings, and the meaning is that the unalienable cannot be taken away from you, and you cannot even abandon it. You can sit there, okay, I volunteer to give up my unalienable rights. Can't.
My blue eyes.
Yep, my blue eyes. I can't give up my blue eyes. You can take my eyeballs and leave me blind, but the blue eyes are still in my genetics. They're in my DNA.
Right.
They're there. I'm blue-eyed even though I'm blind. I'm still blue-eyed. All right? I can't abandon. Now, and you can't legally take them away from me.
Right.
But with the inalienable, you can't legally take them away from me, but I can waive those rights if I care to. I can say, oh, that's an inalienable right. I voluntarily waive my right to liberty.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of missing books, we noticed that your website is missing.
Yep. Been missing now for about 10 months.
10 months?
Yep. 8 or 10 months. I don't remember exactly. 9 months maybe. I'm not sure exactly. But I've been working the whole time to prepare a lawsuit to go after WordPress. Because WordPress has shut off my website for no good reason. I had over 2,000 articles on that blog. I'd been publishing for somewhere in the neighborhood of 13, 14 years. Nobody came, nobody complained, nobody said, and all of a sudden, somebody got a complaint. They said, oh, you've offended us one way or the other. And they didn't say how. I don't know why they took the website down or the blog down. Right? They have not told me this was your offense. Mm-hmm. But I have allegedly offended their terms of service. Well, I've been looking and I've been reading and one thing and another like that, and I think I've got a viable case against them, and we'll see. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. If I've overlooked something or whatever, I may be in trouble with them. If I haven't, and I think I have some lines of argument that are going to be compelling. Goes to journalism for one thing. They advertise on their website, the WordPress website. They are strong supporters of the First Amendment, freedom of the press. Well, I found out that freedom of the press is not merely freedom of the printing press. All right, where if you've got a printing press, you can create a newspaper or a magazine or whatever. That's not just what they're talking about. When they talk about freedom of the press, they're talking about freedom of the investigative journalists to investigate the government. Mm-hmm. And if you're investigating the government, and I found case law on this, it goes back into the 1800s and whatever, if you're investigating the government, they need to stay the heck out of your way. Mm-hmm. All right? They cannot interfere legally. Now, people don't understand this to the same extent that they maybe did 100 or 200 years ago. But the press was powerful. I didn't need a license to investigate the Pentagon. I didn't need, it was an unalienable right protected by the First Amendment. Mm-hmm. All right, freedom of the press. Mm-hmm. And insofar, I'm doing my research after the blog is closed down. And I'm looking for things, and I'm finding things. But I found a description of investigative journalist that goes back into the 1800s. And it essentially said, you can function like a shark in the water. You can go after anything. If you're going after the government and reporting it to the people, you're golden. They can't interfere. We do not have freedom of the press so we can keep up with the, who are the women out there in the family? Kardashians. That's not what freedom of the press is about. Freedom of the press is about investigating the government and reporting your findings to the people. That's freedom of the press. And it's no small thing. I said, holy cow, that's what I've been doing since 1990. And I didn't even understand. I was publishing a little magazine. But I did not understand fully. I was investigating the government. I was reporting on whatever I found to the readers of the magazine, the rest of that sort of thing. But I did not regard myself as an investigative journalist. And then I found this quote going back to, what was it, 1788. That's right, it was 1788 is Respublica versus Oswald or Griswold. I don't quite remember which one it is, but Respublica versus Oswald or Griswold. And they tell you, look, if this guy is an investigative journalist, you got to leave him alone. Mm-hmm. And I read that and I said, wait, that's me. That's what I've been doing for the last 30 years. Mm-hmm. Surprise, surprise.
You know, that goes back to the beginning of this conversation because I didn't know what you were going to discuss tonight. And when you said Bible law and number 1, Genesis 1:1, and the creator is the owner, well, you created that blog.
Oh, yeah.
It's yours.
They admit that I own the blog. They've admitted in their own paperwork that I own the blog. Mm-hmm. Right? Or at least, it's a little bit fuzzy, but they admit I have intellectual property rights in the documents I published on that blog, and in the order I published them on the blog. They've got the terms of service, and the terms of service are pretty tight. They are essentially heads they win and tails I lose. But they're advertising that they're a strong supporter of freedom of the press. That's just nonsense. One guy came up, and so far as I know, I don't know how many guys, but somebody came up and they said, I don't, that article offends me. All right, if you've got an article, if I've done an article that's offensive, then maybe if someone said, look, Mr. Adask, this and such and such, this is offensive. And I looked at it and I said, you're right. I got passionate, I got foolish, I did something dumb. I'll delete the article or I'll amend it. Okay, I could go along with that. But they knocked off over 2,000 articles that I've been publishing for over 10 years. I don't remember, it's 13, 15, something like that. They took them all out because one guy pointed to one article. That's because ridiculous. He was allegedly offended. Ridiculous. Pick up a newspaper. Get a daily newspaper. Look at the front page and tell me how many articles are on that front page that are not offensive to somebody.
How about the Super Bowl?
Well, it's offensive to the losers.
Yeah.
If you lost, they're reporting. We'll never live down the San Francisco. We'll never live down this loss. I'm angry. And I want to take the report on the Super Bowl, get it out of here. And you can go to the next one on impeachment of Trump. That'll be there. All right? And Trump can be offended by the article if the article says he needs to be impeached and hanged, and somebody else, or it might be another, in which case Trump would be offended. Or if the article says he's a hero and you can't impeach him, then the Democrats are going to be offended. You can get down to the weather report. Mm-hmm. It's offensive to some people. You reported that it was going to be rainy on Saturday. I'm a Ford dealer, and I've just I've just spent $10,000 on my open house for Saturday, and you're reporting that it's going to rain, and that means nobody's going to come to my open house. I've just lost $10,000, and I am offended. And what I'm getting to, if you can knock the articles, every article, journalistic article, you knock that article out. You say, oh, that's offensive. You got to delete that, and delete the next one. That's offensive. There are no journalistic articles that are not offensive to someone.
It's so ridiculous.
All right? Journalism is always offensive to somebody. It's not always, we don't see these, we seldom see. Mrs. O'Leary's cat got caught up the tree, and we sent the fire department out to set up a ladder to catch the cat, and bring it down to the ground. Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people are offended by that, but one of the neighbors said, damn, hate those cats. Stinking up the neighborhood and the rest of that sort of thing. You should have left it up there in the tree to die. Somebody's going to be offended almost every single time. And we are seeing this censorship taking place. Natural news, they've been taken off. Alex Jones has had at least part of his website deleted, so far as I know. I don't know if it's been restored or not. But there's a lot of people that are, you've had plenty. How many of your videos have been deleted?
Probably hundreds now out of thousands. I think there's 11,000 videos up there. But it's just a matter of days. They're taking down anything that mentions Sandy Hook and 9/11.
I understand. You know, it's not where we talk about freedom of the press. We are not encouraging the journalists to be liars. But it is possible that they make mistakes.
Right.
All right? The press is not the freedom of the perfect press. It's freedom of the press. All right? Including the guys that are still hungover from last night.
Yeah.
Get out there and write some story about such and such. You know, there's your job. Freedom of the press. All right, I wrote the story. And then the next day when my hangover was gone, I realized, I made a mistake there. All right, but that happens. It does not mean that we delete everything that some people in positions of some kind of power don't like. And that's what we're seeing right now. And it's happening. It's not just happening here in the United States. It's happening around the world. I've got an article that I clipped. Chinese doctor in China. He warned about the coronavirus, right? Before it broke loose. He was arrested and jailed, all right, for spreading the news about the coronavirus prematurely.
Yep.
And in the process, he caught it. So he's got the virus. He was trying to warn people, look, there's a bad disease out here, and the government wanted to suppress the news.
Yeah.
They wanted to censor the news, and they jailed him, complete with a exposure. I don't mean that. I'm not saying that the government exposed him to the coronavirus. I don't know how he caught it, but he got it.
Yeah.
Another one of those deals. No good deed goes unpunished.
Oh yeah.
Right? That formula apparently works in China as well as it does in the United States.
Yeah, that's our mantra around here.
Well, I understand. It makes it interesting, though. And the deeper you get into it, the scarier it becomes. I mean, you begin to see, oh my God, this is spiritual warfare, and you begin. Used to be, I don't know. I had a complaint with the government. I didn't like the government. But I did not expect that the government was overtly practicing spiritual warfare against the people of the United States of America. I absolutely understand that now. I don't mean that I understand it fully, but I understand it's taken place.
Yeah.
And this program, when we started going through that list of items, person can look at this, and you got to study it until you can see it and really talk about it as second nature. You can't just get a copy and post it, you copy the document and post it or something like that. You've got to study it and learn it and apply it on your own, and it takes effort. But if you do, again, We tried it on the Attorney General of the state of Texas. He's now the governor of the state of Texas, but back then he was the Attorney General. They dropped the suit after investing $6.5 million in it. They just dropped it, and they never did say why. They just stopped. We'd been getting things, we've been getting, like I said, documents from the Attorney General of Texas every 2 to 6 weeks for a year. And then I sent this freedom of religion defense up there, and they went dead silent for about 5 months. Didn't hear a word from them. And they came back after that for another bite at the apple, kind of. But what ultimately happened is they just dropped the case. And then they never said goodbye. Never said, gee, guys, or you guys sure are smart. They beat it, right? I don't think you can find anybody else who's got a story like that.
Where can people listen to your radio show now?
I do a program for 2 hours from 8 to 10 on Tuesday nights on American Voice Radio. And you can find AmericanVoiceRadio.com. And from 8 to 10. And myself and Frank Stefan, we covered politics and law and one thing and another. It's just run and gun for 2 hours. And I enjoy doing it. It's fun for me, and it's therapy for me. Can't afford a shrink, so I do talk radio.
Yeah, I think it's the same for Rudy. His YouTube channel is his outlet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
It's a story. If I had a little more money, I'd hire a shrink, but I can't, so I have to do talk radio.
Well, we really enjoyed listening to what you had to teach us tonight. I think it's really important everybody digs into this information because it is spiritual warfare, and our salvation depends on it. Because if people think they're just monkeys or slime snake monkey mutants, then they won't be looking for salvation, will they?
They can't expect it.
Nope.
They can't expect it. They can't claim religious freedom. They can't claim the blessing of liberty. If you're not a man or woman made in God's image, you got nothing.
That's right.
You and Spot has as much right to vote as you do.
No. Oh, dear. All right.
Well, thank you, Aaron. It was a pleasure being on the program, and I really enjoyed talking to you.
It sure was, Alan. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right.
Take care.
Have a good evening. Yep.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
What a national treasure.